to We Poets. My name is Sally Baker, and I'm the host of We Poets. We Poets is a poetry show for boys and girls between the ages of 6 and 13. We also have interns come between the ages of 13 and 19. So if you would like to be a poet on the show or an intern, please have your parents or your school teacher call me. I'm always looking for new youngsters to come and read their poetry. Also, I also interview an adult guest each week, and the guest tells us something about his or her a job or profession that young people can pursue. Tonight I have a very special guest, and his name is Nick BOYKIN. He is a tech helper volunteer at the main library in downtown Berkeley, and he's going to tell us all about his interesting background. So here we go with Nick. Hi Nick, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad you could come and tell us all about working at the library and about your background. So here I've got a few questions for you. My first question is, what first drew you into writing poetry?
Well, ever since a young age, I'm told by my parents, like as young as 3, I was just always telling stories and thinking narratives up in my head. And on long car trips, I'm told I would tell a story that would last the entire ride, over an hour, 2 hours. And I would always basically write or come up with ideas throughout my young life. But when I got to high school, I was doing a lot of reading that kind of led me toward poetry. Specifically, I was reading Jack Kerouac's The Dharma Bums, and it almost completely changed my life. The picture that it kind of drew about being an artist and getting back to nature, and that inspired me to start writing poetry and taking photographs, and that's where the journey started.
How old were you when you got your first camera to take the photographs?
I think that I was probably 15.
Oh.
It was around the time that digital cameras were like first coming into the market, so I kind of messed around with that. My father had at one time been a professional photographer.
Oh.
So when I got a little older, he would loan me 35 millimeter cameras that he just had laying around.
Good.
It was kind of before those were cool again.
And what were some of the things you photographed then?
Well, I grew up in Merced, California, which is in the Central Valley, and once I had a learner's permit, I can get in my car and drive to Yosemite or other like redwoods, etc. Or, I mean, it's a very rural and flat area, but then 20 minutes away you're in the mountains. So.
And your father would let you take the car with your friends and go, or?
I kind of lucked out, and I got to buy very cheaply my aunt's old Volvo sedan when I was 16.
16?
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
So I had some freedom to take pictures wherever I wanted, and
wow.
then write about it.
Good, good. Now, you've written a book about volunteering at your local library. What about that job inspired you?
Well, the thing about it is that I'm a volunteer in the computer lab at the Central Branch, and many people are coming through there all the time, and I was inspired by interacting with them and being of service to them, but also the staff and the institution itself was just kind of full of intrigue and interesting situations, and it was inspiring at every juncture, because the people were interesting. There was never a dull moment. And also, there's so much information there, so many books and resources and databases, and I could just pull something off the shelf and be inspired. So.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that you help more adults or children when you're at the library?
Well, the children's area on the 4th floor is separate.
Right.
The 2nd floor where the computer lab, it's mostly adults. Families would come in, but I mostly would interact with the adults. There's lots of kids.
Do you like to work with children, though?
I don't have that much experience with it, but I do like kids.
That's good. That's good. Now, let's see. Would you describe your process for writing these and other poems, and any advice on how to begin writing?
Well, I think that at least, in my reading and my experience, every artist has a process that they kind of adhere to usually. And for me, it mostly involves kind of like getting an idea and then kind of walking away from it for a while and like, oh, that's a good idea, but let's think about something else. And then, you know, I do all my writing at a cafe. So, and I'm pretty busy, so I don't have a lot of time to go there. So when I do, that's when I kind of jump into action and I start thinking about the structure of the poem. And that really works for me. And so for me to start a poem, it's kind of using that process, because it can be intimidating. Like, you have an idea, but you don't know how to begin. And I just say, you know, find a way to like at least make, you know, a structure around your work, you know, work, and then you'll feel more confident.
Now, you say you like to go to a cafe. Isn't the noise in a cafe distracting when you're trying to write and concentrate?
For me, it actually helps.
It helps? Oh, the clatter and the noise?
Well, for one thing, there's no Wi-Fi at the cafe I go to, so I can't go on away from my Word document to surf the internet. But also, I can just look up and take a break just by, you know, seeing the busyness and all the life going on, and it kind of acts as a white noise too and helps me focus. It's the same thing is true at the library, where I actually read books in the middle of the computer lab when I'm not helping people. And the hustle and bustle kind of helps with that too.
Now, do you like to do your writing during the day, or in a midday, or in the evening?
First thing in the morning. Because just when I have all my energies.
You get up early?
Yeah.
And then you have a pad beside on your nightstand, and you start writing? Or?
Well, I actually rarely write at home. I revise at home, but I bring my laptop to the cafe and just have coffee, and there I go.
There you go. Now, how many days a week do you work at the library?
16 hours a week and 4 days. I work afternoons.
Afternoons. That's your best time? You like that? Is that the best time of day that you like to work?
I didn't choose it. There are a few other computer helpers who have other slots. Some of them just have like one full day or a morning, and it just happened, you know, almost 2 years ago that was the slot that they had open.
So you took that. Yeah. Now, let's see here. What does the Berkeley Public Library, or other libraries in general, mean to you?
Well, I touched on this a little bit, but something that a few of my favorite librarians and I keep saying is that, you know, there's so few commons left in America where it doesn't cost anything to be there. You have access to services and just space and shelter that doesn't, you know, require class standing or money. And I know many librarians who are using the platform that they have to enrich people's lives through outreach and programs and services that aren't offered elsewhere for free. So that's part of it. But also information in the form of computers and databases and books. You know, it costs money generally to access the internet or to buy a book. So I think that it's a commodity that really should be protected and preserved.
Now let's take a little break from what we've been talking about, and let's talk about some of these things about you. Looks like you have a newspaper article here and a magazine. Let's talk about that, please.
So when I was 18 years old, I was a finalist. I was one of a few finalists in this international poetry competition edited by Bob Haas, who was former poet laureate of the United States and a professor at UC Berkeley, where I eventually went. And when that happened, my local newspaper published on the front page an interview with me.
Oh, good.
And you know, I brought it out to show today, and I reread it, and I was really couldn't believe how snarky I was as an 18-year-old.
Isn't it funny how we change and we look at ourselves, things that happened in the past, and well, tell us a little bit more about what it says. You didn't tell us about.
Oh, Okay, so the article is called "Poet Inspired by Jazz Musicians," and I play the trombone. I was in jazz band in high school, and the poem that won the competition was this sort of sound poem based on this song by a jazz trio called the Bad Plus.
The Bad Plus.
Yeah, they're kind of an experimental jazz trio.
Oh.
And part of it was that the weekend before I had the interview, I had gone up to Yoshi's in Oakland and to see them. And I brought the poem with me, and I had just won the contest.
Good.
And I got to present it to them before the show at the Ben & Jerry's across the street.
How nice.
The piano player just happened to be there. And so they read it, and then after the show talked to me about it. And were just they were very kind.
Very kind, okay.
So it was, and I talk about that in the article.
And you say you were 18 there?
Yes.
Wow. Now let's talk about this other one you have on your lap.
So after that, I went to UC Berkeley. That's why I live in the Bay Area and stayed. And in the fall of 2010, one of my poems was published in the Cal Literature and Arts magazine, which is one of the campus magazines. And it's in the center, and it's cool because they paired poems with visual art who were selected.
Oh.
And my poem was called Sunday in Fruitvale. So
Sunday in Fruitvale. The Fruitvale out here that we have? Good, good.
It was about visiting a friend, spending the night at his place, and then walking back to the bus stop Sunday morning when church was letting out.
Oh.
And it's kind of long. But I like that they paired it with this, I guess, is it pencil or pen sketch? So that was cool. And the next year in the spring, I read a couple poems at the gala
Good, good. Now, have you had other things published since these two?
I'm trying to remember. No, I don't believe so. I've kind of been incubating it, but I started at the library 2 years ago as a volunteer, and about a year ago, I started writing this collection of poems. And from the beginning, I decided, you know what? It's been a long while since I've been published. Why not create a manuscript to be published as a book?
Good.
And so about a week and a half ago, I printed the manuscript out, and right now I'm doing a line-by-line revision correction, so it's not done yet, but it's 65 8.5 by 11 pages, which bound in a book would probably be much longer than that.
Wow, wow.
A lot of my poetry is very long form.
Do you have people do the proofreading for you?
No. Well, my mother she's now retired, but she's an English teacher and was my English teacher. And I didn't mention when I was talking about my process that I usually will call her when a poem is done and read it to her over the phone for feedback. So I do have her support.
Good.
And I know other writers who we shop each other's work, but yeah.
Now, are you an only child?
Yes. Yes, I am.
So you got all the attention at home. You really had to study hard if your mother was an English teacher.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
well,
yes.
I mean, luckily that was my favorite subject.
Oh, good. Good. Now, let's see here. Who influenced you when you were young to make art and write?
Well, I was thinking about this one pretty hard. And really, to be completely honest, I'd have to say my Uncle Michael, who is a very creative person. And when I was, from a small child into my teenage years, he was working in Hollywood.
Oh.
He started out as a camera operator and directed music videos and was a producer of, on a small scale. But more than just film, like he lived in Los Angeles, and when we visited him, it was always amazing.
I can imagine.
He had this old BMW convertible, and we drive around anywhere in LA. Like, my parents would be back at the apartment and we just take off. And he showed me all sorts, like music and movies, and I think that more than anything, that's what made me want to be an artist, was kind of touching against his world. And yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to ask you a few more questions, okay?
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, don't turn off those TVs. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to We Poets. I'm Sally Baker, the host, and I'm interviewing my very special guest for today, and his name is Nick BOYKIN. He's a tech help volunteer at the Downtown Library in Berkeley, and we're having an interesting conversation about some of his duties. Welcome back again, Nick.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Here we go. Could you tell us something about the computer lab?
Well, it's been about 1.5 years that I've been there, and when I first applied for a volunteer position at the library, they had a kind of a sequence of choices. Like, I can't remember, but one of them was tutoring, and then there's a few other positions. Like, I checked arts and music first, but they always need helpers in the computer lab because people come and go. And I gave it a shot, and I enjoyed it a lot because I mean, myself, I'm not really a tech kind of guy. It was never my interest. I was always more interested in, you know, arts and literature. But I found that, you know, just because of when I was born in 1989, I just grew up with technology kind of accelerating. And I learned to adapt to changing times and adopted, you know, the cell phone and, you know, whatever. And so a lot of people who come into the lab and who are looking for help, either with using our computers or using their own computers, many of them are elderly and, you know, say a decade ago, they didn't have to adopt a cell phone or use computers, and now you have to. Yes. Everybody does. And I mean, I feel really valued by these people because, you know, unless they had a really sympathetic, you know, relative to sit down with them and teach them all of it, otherwise you're kind of just on your own.
Yes.
So there's that, helping the elderly, and our printing system at the library is really unnecessarily complicated.
I can imagine.
I think that you know about
yes,
this.
Yes, you have.
But that's guaranteed, you know, just show them the process, and that feels good.
Yes.
But the computer lab is pretty cool. I mean, there are many computers, and you don't even need a library card to use them. You can walk up to the reference desk, which is kind of where I'm located, and you pick up a little paper slip with some numbers on it, and you have computer access.
Good.
To the internet and to word processing and the databases that the library has for all sorts of different subjects. So.
And the computer labs are open, what, one night a week, is it, or?
They're open whenever. Well, I can only speak to Central Library.
Yes.
But when the library is open, and the computer lab is as well.
Good.
So
good. Now let's take a little break and hear your poem that you've written for us tonight.
Yeah, it's fun because the poetry I write, I never really thought of as being kid friendly because it's very wordy, and but anyway. I wrote this poem specifically for the show. Good, good. And what's the title? It's called Above Plus Beyond.
Okay, be our guest, please.
All right. It's easy just to sit, looking comfortably at the edges of your usual day, doing the things that always turn the key. It's fun to return again to where our meadows are widest and long, where memory holds the wildest greens and most brilliant blues. We move through the worlds that we choose, connecting like stepping stones across our lives. Why not jump to the rock we know is strongest? But beyond the line of what we know, strange and frightful as it all may seem, with just a push we can find the treasures of the new. Hike a trail you've always wanted to but haven't. Power through the last minutes of a tough climb and be greeted by the unknown grandeur of a new view. Each of us hold the power to change everything, but nothing can change without our making difficult decisions and standing up, moving forward, embracing possibility. The ruddy mountain slope shooting up above complete woodland green. A sky deepening from cerulean to black, calling you from horizon's edge. We see what is possible when we climb from the comfort of our valleys up.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great. I'm
you.
sure you're going to get some awards for that.
Well, this isn't in the collection.
Oh.
But, I guess that, well, we'll see.
Put it in. How many do you have in your collection?
23.
23.
And many of them are long form, like over 3 to 10 pages long. So
You have been a busy guy. Now, are you going to have photographs to go with some of the writings?
Right now?
Yeah.
I do not know.
You do not. But do you plan to?
Well, I guess I could give my Instagram handle. No, I did not bring visual aids, but besides the clippings.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now you say you're going back to college this fall, right?
Yes.
What are you going to be majoring in, and what college are you going to attend?
Well, I am a film studies major
Oh.
at UC Berkeley. And I'm an academic senior.
Good.
And, you know, I left about 4 years ago, so it's been a long time gone. But, you know, it's just going to be a fairly brief, under 2 years, finishing things up. And after that, and the main reason that I kind of was becoming motivated again to go back was with my undergraduate degree done. I want to pursue postgraduate work in library sciences to eventually become a librarian, tentatively. That's
And you think you want to stay in California, or do you want to go out of state or out of the country?
It's funny. It may just have been that my family, you know, kind of saved money by not traveling too far. But I've never left the continental U.S.
Oh.
So my plan, and it's been that way for a long time, the first time I leave the U.S., I want to go to Italy, where my ancestors are from.
Oh.
And but I love California. I think that I'll continue to live here.
But you must go to Italy. Italy's a beautiful country.
I have to do it.
Yes, I went there and I loved it. The food and the people, and so many beautiful things to see, you know. Gorgeous. You must go.
I know. I'm looking forward to it.
Now let's see here. I have one more question. Any advice you'd like to give to young people who would like to tell and write their stories?
Well, it's funny because I feel like the poem is part of my answer to that. I feel like, you know, as a child, you know, I faced a lot of obstacles that I created for myself when it came to just doing the things that I felt comfortable doing. And I can think of the number one thing where I kind of overcame that for the first time was when I was in middle school and I had just been handed a trombone in the band, and our first performances as a marching band and in concert band. And then from there, you know, I played for 7 years.
Good.
But it was being on stage and kind of like I am today. It really like just became like it felt more comfortable on stage probably than not. But it takes getting over a hurdle like that to make art, I think, for anybody. And the sooner you start, the better. And I would say, like, you know, if you're into drawing, you know, really give, you know, different media a shot, like painting or sculpture. Like when it comes to writing, you know, take risks. And like if you have an idea and you think, oh, this is too much, you know, it'll never work, like people will laugh at me, like just explore and see where it takes you.
Right.
And that's how you get better.
That's right. That's right. Do you still play the trombone?
I do. I haven't had a gig in a few years because I'm kind of a perfectionist.
Oh.
And also the trombone is not the most in-demand instrument.
Today, yeah.
Band leaders will say that it is, but then you're playing, you know, kind of a role in the background. But
I played the clarinet when I was in high school, and I hated it, but I had to play because my grandmother wanted me to play, and it was a metal
specifically
one.
the clarinet?
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow.
And in the winter, it was so cold if we had to march, you know, in the snow and the ice, you know. And I hated it. I was so glad to give it up.
That's. I love playing the trombone.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Well, anyway, I want to thank you so much for coming. You've done a wonderful, wonderful job. And I know we're going to be hearing great things about you with your writing in the future. And I enjoy coming to the library and having you help me and Adnan. We come there quite often, and you're always so helpful and kind, and it's very professional.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it was a pleasure to help you guys. I hope to see you again soon.
Oh, you will, you will. Any parting words that you would like to give before we end the program?
Well, write about what you know about, and see where it takes you, because there are rewards at the end of the road.
Oh, yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Well, I'd like to say to our boys and girls and parents watching, if you have a child who would like to be on We Poets between the ages of 6 and 13, you can call me or have your school teacher call me. And if you'd like to be a guest like Nick has been tonight, I'm always looking for adult guests to come, and we're always looking for teenagers. We train middle school and high school teenagers between the ages of 13 and 19 as our volunteers. So, and our volunteer interns. So we're always looking for people to come. So without further ado, shall we wave goodbye to our audience? Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.